Okay, good day. This is a lecture related to computed and digital radiography, image acquisition. There's a trigger related to CRDR, image acquisition. So both the triggers, there are actually two triggers that will be discussed. Image acquisition and then errors. So both will be interchangeably discussed throughout the session. Okay, so the trigger. Digital radiography changed the way radiographers are able to take and process radiographic images, from changing the image receptor, the image processor, image processing, and allowing post-processing actions for the image, which can reduce repeat examinations caused by incorrect use of technique factors. So radiographers would refer to radiologic technologies dealing with the general radiography section. Okay, so those who are taking X-rays or radiographs of the patient. Okay, so from when we try to uh, go back to the history of our profession, where we started with the glass plates, and then later on, uh, the imaging receptors has been or have been evolving from the glass plates, and then they turned into a plastic type. They started with the acetate, the somewhat flammable na mga acetate, and then later on changed into a polyester na mga bases. Okay, so, and then later on dayon, through the development of technology, we have incorporated our images and then imaging technique into a computer system. So that's why the trigger mentioned here, the processing or how we process our radiographic images, and then the image receptor itself. No, we started with a having the actual film itself, the X-ray film or the radiograph, and then right now, no, the common practice, the radiograph itself, the hard copies na to are almost obsolete. Okay, and then the image receptor has also been changed, no, because of the absence of the X-ray film. So we need another type of processor in order for us to process our image receptor, and then of course to process the images that we have taken from our patient. And then because the images are already stored in the computer, and then computers allow us to manipulate images, so that's why we have post-processing actions. Okay, so one of the main advantage, one of the reason why the computed radiography has evolved or has been done into practice, it's because of this. No? The reduction in the repeat examination, that was the main purpose why the computer system has been integrated into our field. Okay, so the repeat examinations, the most common problem with the screen film would refer to having the X-ray film itself, no? The radiograph. Okay, so the problem with that was, if we have an image, then that is the final image. Okay, right after we take the image of the patient, then that will be the final image. We cannot manipulate that type of image. If ever it is too dark, it is too light, then we cannot manipulate that. The only way that we can adjust the density and then the contrast is to retake the examination. So that's why gibotang nako diri sa trigger, incorrect use of technique factors, because that was the fault, the most common fault of the artists or the radiographers when it comes to practice of the screen film radiography. Okay, so we will start first with a comparison of the sequences when it comes to the screen film, the computed radiography system, and then digital radiography system. So along with the differences when it comes to the image receptor. Okay, so when it comes to the X-ray tube, you can use, like for example, you have a facility that has a screen film, and then you want to upgrade into a computer radiography system. You can actually still use the same X-ray tube. Now, the same X-ray tube can be used in screen film, computed radiography, and then digital radiography system. Same X-ray tubes can be recycled. Okay, sorry, natabunan sa akong camera. Okay, so this is the typical natong screen film cassette. Okay, and then this is for the computed radiography. We commonly call this as the imaging plate. And then this is the digital radiography na imaging plate or digital radiography na image receptors. Okay, so these are our image receptors. Basically, they receive the X-rays after the X-rays have interacted with the patient. Okay, so diba, when we have, let's try to draw. Okay, diba, you have your, like for example, this is our X-ray tube. And then you have a patient, and then X-rays will exit out of the X-ray tube and interact with the patient, and then X-rays will exit the patient. Okay, and then these X-rays will interact with the image receptor dayon, the IR. Excuse me. So IR. So the IR could be, if ever we are dealing with conventional radiography, that would be the cassette. Siyang IR, and then for computed radiography, and then this will be the image receptor for the digital radiography, the digital receptor. Okay, so in screen film, we have the cassette, you have the IS, that is the intensifying screen, which is the main function is to produce light, no? To convert X-rays into light. So that is still the same happen with computed radiography and digital radiography. We also have phosphor layers. They can be integrated or they can be constructed with phosphor layers, or they can be constructed with phosphors. For example, this is the imaging plate. This is the cassette for the computed radiography, and then the imaging plate is what is inside of the cassette, no? In which it contains phosphor. Okay, so every time we expose patients in using computed radiography, this white part, mura siya cardboard, this white part is the sensitive part. No? If we try to pull that out, that's actually the same size, no? Almost the same size as the cassette. Okay, so nana siya sa sulod dira. So ipansak lang na siya diri sa kuan, sa cassette kibali niya. Okay, and then it will be the computer ang magtangtang dayon ani. So it's not the radtech. Like for example sa conventional radiography, di ba? We have the cassette, and then if we have an X-ray film here, di ba? We manually remove and load the X-ray film towards the cassette. Okay, so that's the function of the radtech. And in computed radiography, it will be the computer system. No, it will be the processor, the computed radiography processor, who will take this out of the cassette. Okay, so this is not easily removed. This has actually, the cassette has actually a lock. And siya locking mechanism in order to lock the imaging plate in place, no, inside. Okay, so same lang gihapon aning IS na to. The IS converts X-rays into light, and then similar to this, X-rays will also be converted into light photons. Okay, so same gihapon, we have the digital radiography receptor, the digital receptor na to. If it is constructed with a phosphor layer, then X-rays will be converted into light photons. Okay, so this illustration is from the book Sequence of Activity for a Screen Film, for screen film radiography. So the examination will be scheduled, the study forms will be printed, or basically the physician's request, and then you also have the folder being prepared by the radtech, and then the radtech will escort the patient to the exam room, and then once the patient will be escorted towards the X-ray room, then the patient, if ever ready na cassette, the patient will be positioned towards the left. For example, there's a table, the patient will lie down, or if the the examination would require the patient to stand up towards the chest stand. Then you can have the patient stand there, and then you can load the cassette. It could be maybe the loading of the cassette would refer to uh, load the cassette inside of the bucket tray, no? The bucket tray. So that means we will insert the cassette on the bucket tray, and then or could also refer to loading of the X-ray film. So, loading of X-ray film. Okay, so remember, diba, our cassette, this one, this is our cassette, and then this needs the X-ray film in order for it to be useful. Okay, without the X-ray film, of course, if we expose the cassette alone without the X-ray film, then we cannot form any images, or the images will not be recorded. And then once the cassette is ready, we can perform the examination if the position of the patient is already correct. And then right after the procedure is done, we can process the film. Okay, so we can process the film since we are dealing with screen film radiography. So it could be either of the two. It could be manual, shortcut na lang, manual or automatic. It could be manual or automatic processing. Okay, so right after processing, of course, the rad tech would have to reload the cassette. Again, balik ta. Siya. So, diba? The X-ray film will be loaded. Right after the examination, the X-ray film will be unloaded and will be processed. And then right after processing, the rad tech will reload the cassette. Okay, so another X-ray film, another unexposed film will be placed inside of the cassette. Okay, so right after reloading of the cassette, of course, if we are dealing with manual or automatic processing, we can hang the films in order for us to evaluate the image if it is already acceptable. So if there are mistakes in the examination, like for example, there are artifacts that are impeding the region of anatomy in the image. Okay, so if, like for example, the factor is wrong, you use the wrong factor. Like for example, the image is too dark, or maybe the image is too light, or maybe there is motion in your final radiograph, then that would require repeat examination. Okay, so if the image is acceptable, then of course it can be forwarded towards the radiologist for the diagnostic reading. And then once the diagnostic reading is available, then we can have the film sorted out in the different files and folders. Okay, so of course, before supposedly, before you proceed with the giving of the film towards the radiologist, so of course you have to escort the patient out of the X-ray room. Okay? So of course, ipailis na to si patient na kung outpatient si patient na to, that means niadto lang sila sa hospital for the sake nga magpa-examine, like for example sa ilahang chest. Okay? So, di ba, they are required to change into patient's gown, and then right after the examination, they would change back into their normal nilang clothing. If the patient is an admitted patient, then that means they are staying in the hospital, then most probably they would be already wearing a patient's gown. Okay, so no need to change na. So just make sure that there will be no artifact that will be present in your image. Okay, so this is the whole process for the screen film radiography. So when it comes to computed radiography, so ang na-change ng gid-ani, diba, is the image receptor itself. That is one of the main changes to the image receptor, and then also the processing technique. So instead of having it manual or automatic, it is now computerized. Okay. So after performing of the examination, process the film gihapon. So same lang gihapon ang processes dere, pero the absent nga step is reloading of the cassette because there is no again there is no X-ray film that is available. We are not using the X-ray film anymore. But there's still the load cassette step. So again, that would mean this may mean that the load cassette would refer to the bucket tray. Now that means we are loading the cassette towards the bucket tray. Okay, na siya. Perform examination, process the film, and then again, there is no reloading of the X-ray film. Okay, we are not dealing with the X-ray film, so we are go back. We will try to go back to the image. So again, during processing, Kanisha, during exposure of the patient, what the rad tech can see and what the patient can see is only this, only the cassette. This is inside of the cassette. Now again, the white portion is inside of the cassette. Okay, so once we insert this cassette towards the processor, then this white portion, this will come out. It will be fed towards the processor. So the processor will automatically get this one, and then it will be exposed to laser light, and then the image will be processed. Okay, so that is for the CR, no, for the computed radiography. So other than that, no, same lang gihapon og ilang processes. And for this time, for the digital radiography, several additional steps are eliminated when progressing from screen film radiography through CR and then DR nga mga system. Okay, so absent na ang loading of the cassette. Diba again, wala naman tayo mga X-ray film, and then processing of the film, especially for the DR, there's no processing of the film. That means the rad tech will not be the one to manually process the film, even if similar to an automatic processor in which the rad tech would feed the cassette towards the automatic processor. This time in digital radiography, the image right after exposure will be transported or will be digitally transported towards the monitor. So that's why automatic na siya din, skip siya towards the image QC, because right after the performance of the examination, right after let's go back to the image. So when the digital receptor receives X-rays, the image will be converted into a digital, or the analog signal will be converted into a digital image, which will be forwarded directly to a monitor. Okay, so instead, the image nga magtambay pa siya dere, no? Not similar to screen film and computed radiography, in which in screen film, but the image right after the examination, right after the X-ray film receives the X-ray or receives light from the IS. So the film or the image is still contained in the image receptor before being processed. And also the same with computed radiography. Right after the exposure to X-ray, the image is still contained in the imaging plate. Okay, so it's not directly integrated into the computer. This one in the screen film na radiography, diba? We call it as a latent image, the invisible image. So both the screen film and then the computed radiography system have latent image. That means they contain invisible image before being processed, and then right after processing, padayon na to makita ang manifest image or the visible image. In digital radiography, the latent image is absent. Okay, right after exposure, right after the receptor receives X-rays, the data will be directly converted into an image, again directed towards the monitor. So that's why ni-skip yung step towards image QC, because right after the performance of the examination, you can already see your image on the monitor. Okay, so that's why automatic na siya nga kaning image evaluation. Okay, so that is image QC. That is image evaluation. Okay, so when it comes to terminologies, laban when it comes to the clinical setting, and then also some of the clinical pudsad nga mga terminologies, there's a difference between CR and DR, and that's why the course pudsad na the title of the course is titled as Computer Radiography and Digital Radiography, because there is somewhat difference nila. Okay, so when it comes to CR, almost similar to a conventional radiography, except the absence of the computer. Okay, so the rad tech, right after performing the examination, will carry the imaging plate towards a processor, and then the processor will scan the image, and then right after scanning of the image will be displayed to a computer. When it comes to digital radiography, no? For example, kani siya nga illustration, after the X-rays will interact with the digital receptor, atong digital na tong image receptor, the detector itself will convert the image or will transfer the data towards the computer, and then the computer will directly convert that into an image. Okay, so that means there is no processor, nawala si processor, wala tong physical gid nga processor. So instead of converting the instead of storing the image temporarily like CR and then screen film, di ba, na ay temporary storage, na sila we call the invisible image, no, the latent image nila nga formation. In DR, again, there is no latent image formation. The images are directly integrated into the computer system, so they are directly converted into a digital image. Okay, so in DR, ano ni siya? May tatong image. Na siya. So like for example, in this digital radiography na receiver, okay, so as you can see, there is a wire. So some of the digital radiography systems are wired, and then as technology is evolving, no, we have actually right now we have the wireless na mga digital radiography image receptors. So that means even if wala yung mga wires, so the receptor can directly send the data towards the computer, and then the computer will process the images. Okay, so that means Wi-Fi is still used, no, sa ato ang field. Okay, so let's try to watch a video related to computed and digital radiography. So I don't know if the audio will be shared. I'm not sure. Okay, so this is an example of a digital radiography system. Yeah, so the X-ray tube is almost the same with conventional. This is a care stream. Care stream na akong gitanaw. There's no audio. Okay, so this is a mobile X-ray machine. Okay, so a mobile, that means na ay ligid. Basically, na ay ligid. Pwede na to siya matulod-tulod. When you say portable, lahi po tong portable nga X-ray machine. Kung mabit-bit nimo na siya, that is portable. Kani siya, matulod-tulod nimo. Na ay ligid ang X-ray machine, then that is a mobile X-ray machine. Lahi po tong mobile nga X-ray imaging facility mo to nasa mga truck. Okay. So back to the video na siya. The rad tech is, let's try to pause. The rad tech is selecting, no, based on the anatomy that the physician is requesting for the examination of the patient. So the rad tech would pick, dili lang maklaro, no, ang mga details niya. Okay, so the rad tech would pick the type of examination that will be performed. Na siya. Okay, And then that is the digital receptor, which is wireless. As you can see, the wireless na siya. So waterproof and lightweight, easy to clean and disinfect, and then high resolution Wi-Fi detector. So it is connected directly, not to the internet, but directed towards the machine. Okay, so right after the procedure is done, so the image will be processed, and then will be seen either here or in the control console in the department. Okay, so you have the RadTech, another real-time display of the SID, fast guiding and accurate positioning. So SID would refer to the source to image receptor distance. So that means even if you cannot see the detector, even if there is no tape measures, so you can measure the distance between your source, that is the X-ray tube, towards your image receptor, which is as demonstrated now being lied down by the patient. So even the control is already wireless, no? Kasi support wireless exposure. Wow, di ba? So long distance, supporting whole body image stitching. So that's another type na pod of image receptor. Okay, so different silang mga image receptors. No? But both are for digital. Isa ka to is wireless. So even a camera is already installed in the X-ray tube. So just imagine the evolvement of technology. So pohon-pohon, muda ko ang inyong mga tuition so we can afford this paseo, hopefully. Dali ta magampuan na magbahala kayo ni siya ng mga systems. Okay, so kato sila ng mga images. Now, right after the RadTech took the exposure, the images has already been stored, already been transferred towards the computer, as is what is being demonstrated right now. Okay, so diba, the examination was related to chest. So the image that was transferred towards the computer is also chest, diba? Na nakabutang dire, real-time wireless transmission and then fast image transfer and optimized workflow. So just imagine, like for example, let's try to use the facility na to sa Liceo. Like for example, our main na office is the RadTech office. Na dito ang atong computer system. Sorry, taba. Okay, wala na ang dog. Okay, so like for example, the main office na to is ang RadTech office. Tapos the patient's room is in PDR 405 or 401. So that means the RadTech is in PDR 405, but then the images is being transferred directly via Wi-Fi dito sa atong dito sa ato ang main nato nga workspace. That means towards the RadTech nga department. So just imagine the workflow of the RadTech na mag X-ray sa RadTech in one area or multiple areas without going back and forth towards the main nga workspace. So in computed radiography, that is the main problem na like for example, same scenario in which the main office nato is ang main nga workspace, and then the rooms are the different rooms of the patient. So like for example, the patient is na-added to the pizza canteen ang yang room. So right after exposure, the RadTech would still run towards the RadTech office to process the imaging plate, and then after processing, he would return to the patient if the image is already acceptable, then the procedure is already done. But if there is something wrong, So he has to return to the patient, retake the examination, go back again to the imaging department to process the film. Okay, so that means the workflow is not so much efficient, no, when it comes to screen film and also computed radiography. Okay, they are just the same. No? We take the exposure of the patient, we process, we take the imaging plate, we take the cassette with us, process the cassette, process the imaging plate, and then right after processing, then that's the time we can reuse the cassette, we can reuse the imaging plate. In digital radiography, right after exposure, the imaging plate is already useful, directly useful na siya. To there's no need to wait for so much time. Maybe just a few minutes, pero when it comes to the comparison nila, it only takes a few moments, a few minutes to for the digital receptor to go back to its useful niya nga state. Okay, so that means the workflow will be much faster. Para siya, diba? Also in this type of imaging system, it can be recharged. No? There's also a battery indicator. Okay. So if you want to buy an X-ray machine, maybe you can also donate your X-ray machine to the Liceo community. Okay, so next we have for the computer. That was for the digital. This is for the computed radiography system. Okay, so we have the actual physical processor. No? Siya. So selection of the anatomy to be examined. Okay, and then, for example, you have a patient that was examined, and then right after examination of the patient, the imaging plate will be processed. Okay, so that means katong remember the white nga murag cardboard nga nasa gawas sa katong akong image ganina. So that part, that white part, that is the one which will go inside the processor to be processed. Yan na siya. Okay, so that's why it would take too long. It would take longer when it comes to computed radiography and screen film radiography. Okay, the cassette is still being used, being processed. While in digital radiography, the digital receptor, right after processing, you can already use that. Yes, so right after the processor is done, so katong white nga part niya will go back towards the cassette. And then you can process your image. Sana siya. When it comes to processing of the image, digital and computed radiography are almost the same. So there's almost no comparison when it comes to their post-processing mga techniques. Okay. Let's exit to that and then continue.